In this episode, we sit down with Jo, one of our incredible adopters, to talk about a decision she and her partner never thought they'd make: home educating their child. For Jo, the journey into home education began not with a plan, but with a need to protect her and her husband's relationship with their child, who experienced trauma trying to navigate mainstream school. Jo shares the heartfelt story behind their choice, the research that guided them, and how home education now works for their family. We also cover tips for making sure your child still gets plenty of social interaction and the unexpected benefits they've discovered along the way.
Hi, so I'm Jo, and we adopted through Adoption Focus in 2019, and had a relatively short process in terms of the training, um, quite a lengthy process in terms of actually meeting our son and how many visits there were, because of his age at the time, so he was slightly older. Um, we home educate him. We opted to do so. He did go to school a little bit, but I guess we'll come on to why we've chosen to do that as part of our life and what that means for us and could mean for other people.
Thank you, Jo. So, I guess you touched on it. Your son did start school briefly for a period of time. What were your initial hopes and expectations for his time at school?
Um, One of the nice things when we were meeting his social workers initially was we got to meet one of his nursery workers. So we kind of understood where he was at with nursery. Quite boisterous, not the greatest attention span, quite competitive with things, but actually a really sociable little boy who had got his little gang and didn't have any issues going in or coming out each day. Um, but I mean, I used to be a music teacher for the local music service. I work in a university, so education has always been drilled into me, and the route of education, that standard route, and you do your GCSEs and you do your A levels, and I was the first in my family to go to university, but obviously that then becomes an aspiration, doesn't it, once people start doing that as well. um, but ultimately we just wanted him to be happy and feel safe in school, and were prepared to do what we needed to do to make that happen. And we felt when he came to us, we felt like we'd found a good local primary school. We knew other people whose kids went there. So we were optimistic, but we obviously knew that that was going to be difficult when he initially needed to start going in. Yeah, but optimism was absolutely there, and we expected a kind of standard school journey to all intents and purposes.
Okay, that's fascinating because I did wonder about whether this is something you'd had in the back of your mind all from the beginning, or was this completely this way you are now is not what you expected at all? Then,
This is so far from what I expected to be doing, and was really out of my comfort zone massively. And I
okay.
think if you're lecturing in a university, you spend all your life thinking about learning outcomes and what's going
Mm,
to happen at the end of it all, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
lesson planning and all the rest of it. So the idea of going to home education had never occurred to me, and even at the time, ultimately, COVID was the issue. Um, he had settled. He was doing okay. He'd um, done the first bit of year one, and then we got into COVID. Um, and we had a lovely time. We had the best time during COVID. Everyone hated it. But even the school stuff we were being sent, I was like, this is lovely because I'm engaging with him, doing this learning. And whereas most people seem to hate having to do those worksheets that school sent, we'd bang through them in an hour in the morning, get a whole day's work done because he's bright and he wants to learn and get on with it. So that wasn't traumatic for us in terms of what people think homeschooling is. Obviously, home education is different because you don't have to follow a standard model, and we can talk about that later. But yeah, it was never anything I thought I'd do, and I really had to do a lot of research before we made the decision. So I bought every book and listened to every podcast known to man, I think. Yeah.
Which I think is so important. That understanding of exactly what you're getting into. I suppose if we can track back slightly, so he'd started school, year one, had settled, was doing okay. You said so. You mentioned COVID and lockdown. Was that the point that you started to notice signs that school wasn't working for your son, or was it just before, or what happened?
We'd always had that initial thing of him going in. I mean, when he first started going into nursery, like if he could have smashed the glass out of those doors to get out, he would have. Like it wasn't enjoyable. The drop-offs initially at nursery for his first term there weren't great, and it was very clear the separation anxiety was there. And he was just convinced I wasn't going to pick him up again. So we did a huge amount of work to kind of get through that. Um, Year one, he had the most amazing teacher. And I think what I would say is that none of this is about the teaching staff, because you don't go into that profession if you don't really care about children. But the teacher was fantastic and he thought she was great and she really got him. He'd got some really lovely little friends as well. The first thing that happened was his best mate moved to a different part of the country. So a kid who's nothing's ever permanent for and nothing's ever my choice loses his best friend. So that was really difficult. Um, and then COVID kicked in. Obviously, we'd had him at home, and for us that was lovely because it was just more time to keep building the connection and the relationship. So it was great. Um, but we did think about we're going to get to a point where going back to school is going to be challenging. So at the point when um, essential workers, key workers kids could go into school for a while. And looked after and formally looked after children could go in. So he was going into school again with that same teacher, and there were 6 kids in the class, and he probably did a term of that, and that was the best school could ever be for him. Like he thought it was brilliant, and I guess there wasn't so much formal learning going on, obviously, but that size group and that amount of people, he felt really comfortable. Um, so we were thinking, oh, he's going into school now. It'll be okay. Um, and then across the summer, as we're getting towards year two, um, we found out that his class teacher, who he loved, was actually moving and teaching in year two. We were like, yes, brilliant. This is not going to be a traumatic transition into year two. It's going to be great.
Excellent.
But it's a 2 form entry school, and the school wouldn't listen when I said it's going to really help him. I know this school has a policy where they don't think it's healthy for children to keep having the same teacher year after year. And I understand kids need to adjust to different teachers, and especially if you're in secondary school when you're jumping from one class to another. So I kind of get that. But for him, in such a difficult time, I was like, can you just put him with the other class, but with that teacher? Because then I know he'll be fine. And they wouldn't do it. So I tried really hard to advocate for that. And then I was thinking about, well, what's he going to need to actually be able to get into the class and be there regularly? So I said, look, he doesn't know this new teacher. He does struggle with new adults and trusting them. He's not going to feel safe. Um, but there wasn't the normal transition meetings happening. So he couldn't go into her class and see her in action. So what they did was sent out an A4 letter with a picture of her saying, I can't wait to have you in my class. And he was going from a really fun, young, vibrant teacher to a bit of a not so fun looking older lady, and he just wasn't feeling it. And a picture doesn't do anything, does it, when you're that age? So I said, look, I get that you're trying to do this and it's difficult because of COVID. Is there any way we could just out of school hours, after school, just for 10 minutes, have a one-to-one meeting in the parents' room so I can bring him in, introduce him to the teacher, because all he needs to do is see me in a room to see that I trust the teacher, and then he'll take that on. But if he can't do that and he can't see that connection, if I don't know them and trust them, he's never going to do it. And I trust them, I understand, but that's how he connects the dots. They couldn't do that. It wasn't safe. It's COVID. Your expectations are too high. I thought that was ridiculous.
Oh dear.
So I went, right, okay. Next option, can we arrange a video call then? Can we just do 5 minutes where he sees her speaking, he gets to see how her expressions work, how engaging she is, she can chat a little bit. He might not communicate with her, but I can talk to her. And if he sees me talking to her, that is better than nothing at all. Oh, we don't do video calls, it's school policy.
Oh
So
no.
all the things that you just think are so simple that could have worked. And I totally get the stress around COVID. I feel like this is going to be your longest podcast ever, by the way. Sorry. But I totally get the stress around COVID. But I just thought, this is all he needs. This is it. And what they agreed to was a phone call. So she phoned me. I don't think she'd been given the context or really understood. He's like, that's a voiceless person. That could be anyone. What's the point? And that's what he says. He's so blooming clear about what he wants and what he needs. It's ridiculous. He's better than any adult I know in terms of expressing what he needs. It's amazing. And it's like, that doesn't mean anything. That's pointless. She could be anybody. And that doesn't work.
And you can't defend that then either, can you? Because you can't
No.
say to him, no, it's okay.
Yeah,
Because he'll see straight through it. I'm sort of wincing when I'm thinking about this. Sorry. It's making me wince because I'm thinking that's just not difficult. Those things are not difficult to do.
They're not hard.
They're
And
not.
even with COVID, they weren't hard. So we were concerned. We got to September, the very first day. COVID, it wasn't being managed well. The queues outside the school gate were astronomical. So having had a whole summer, months and months and months, nearly a year of it just being a few people at a time, got friends in our garden when we were allowed to and all the rest of it. We stayed sociable. But then to see hundreds and hundreds of school kids and parents stressed out in a queue to the school gates, you can see that from the end of our road. And he just legged it and ran home. Like there was no way he was going in. Ran home, started kicking the front door. Let me back in. I'm not going. I can't do it. I arranged for friends to come and call for us so we could walk in with friends. Like I tried so many different things to get him there. I arranged a slightly later start. I'd take him up to the local park. We'd go and chill out. We'd just have a bit of relaxing time to calm him beforehand. Not anything that I could try and do. Nothing worked. I managed to get him in one day, and he was in the playground, but he wouldn't go into the class. And everyone else had gone in, and the head saying, "Oh, it's time to lock the gates now. We need to lock the gates. Come on, it's school time. You need to go, Mom. You can't be here." And he was crying and bawling and screaming. And I was like, if you think I'm leaving him in this state, forget it. Lock the gates. That's it. I've had enough. So the caretaker started locking the gates and locking him in. I was like, you're going to lock my child in a space he doesn't feel safe in. Are you having a laugh? So I properly went at the head, and I did not mince my words, I have to say. And I refused. And I said, I'm not even leaving him. I'm not entertaining the idea of leaving my child with you if you think that's the right thing to do. I tried for about 2 months every day, and it got worse, and his response got worse. He was becoming violent, clinging onto furniture, so I couldn't take him. He knew I would never drag him. He knew I would never grab him. There's a policy. We do not do that. We don't shout. We have a no shouting policy. But I would certainly never grab him. I spoke to one of the teachers, and they said, "Well, do you know what? You're a new mom, and you just don't know how this works. And sometimes you've just got to get hold of them and get them there."
Oh.
Very strong physical reaction to that comment, I'll be
Yeah.
honest.
When he's in school, he's fine. There's obviously something wrong at home.
And it just gets better. Oh,
So you're a
dearie
new
me.
mom, and you probably just you're just going to have to get used to it. Maybe I said, "Are you seriously saying I've got to drag him into school? Are you understanding his background, and you know his background is? Do you think that's going to work, or do you think that's going to destroy our relationship?" "Oh, just cuddle him along the road." I went, "Well, that sounds like drag him in. Sorry, not doing it." So I'd had enough by then, as you can imagine. I was speaking to his local authority where he's from anyway. I was in touch with the therapeutic workers, looking at what we could do, what ideas they'd got and suggestions. They were kind of great and open, but I genuinely reached the point where me trying to get him in, he was completely losing trust in me. And it was really damaging the relationship, and I could feel him withdrawing. I'd get upset now, sorry. I could feel him withdrawing, and I was like, there is no way on earth school is more important than how safe this kid feels. There is no way. And we were in the back garden one day, and he said, "Oof, you've got to meet him one day. He's amazing." He said oh yeah, this was going into year 2. He was on the swing, because the swing and the trampoline are the places where the chats happen. That's where it goes on. So he's on the swing, and he went, "Can I just say, I thought you adopted me because you were going to keep me safe forever. You told me you wouldn't let anything bad happen, and you would always make sure that I felt safe. But school feels dangerous. I don't know the teachers. I don't know who she is. Why did you adopt me if you're going to make me do that?" So what do you do? What do you do in that situation? And I just went, "You're right, and we are not doing this anymore." So my first step was like, we aren't going. I'm telling school we're not going anymore. I'm going to find you a new school that understands. So I found another school that was 1 form entry, really therapeutically focused. The head was training to adopt.
Oh wow.
They've got loads of looked after children there. Da, 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 da. Found this school. I spent a whole term working in the reception area of this school because he would not leave the reception area to go into class. He went into a playground twice without me. They kept bringing kids out to him, meet these people, let's build this, let's make friends. They tried everything. They were brilliant. But he just lost it there one day and he was like, do you not get this is just the same? It's still school. I am not feeling safe. And I was just like, this is a different school. It's different people. Look how helpful they are. And he just lost it. Chairs across the room. Got really quite violent with me. And we talk about it and we talk about it together. Because we use it as an example of how well he's done, that now he can manage emotions, massive emotions he can manage amazingly, and he just couldn't, and he didn't know how to express it. And the teacher, I remember the teachers in the room, and the guy who would have been his class teacher was like, oh my God, I had no idea that little kids like that could be so violent and so strong. Like, it was major. And I'll sit there and take it and be stoic, and I will do what I need to do because I'm not gonna reprimand him for expressing himself. And I had to restrain him, which I've had to do before. But a whole term of trying at that school, and I reached the point where I was like, everyone was now going to have to go back into school permanently. There was no ifs or buts. It was 2020, halfway through, after Easter, I think everybody had to be back in school. There was no way he was going to do that. So they were going to have to start marking him as absent because he wasn't going into the classroom. And I couldn't do my full-time job from the reception area anymore. I was actually going to have to go into work at some point. So I started looking at home ed because I genuinely felt like I had no choice. And I remember talking to his therapeutic workers and saying, if I don't do this, has anyone from this local authority taken their kid out of school to home educate? No. No. No one's ever done that. I thought, well, they probably have. They just haven't told you.
They
Yeah.
probably have, yeah.
Because there's a fear with home education. There's a massive fear around it.
Massive. There's a lot of myths, I think, that hopefully we'll kind of
Yeah.
talk about.
But I
today,
ended up with a meeting. So I got educational psychologist there. I got someone from CAMS. I got the head, the deputy head. I went for it, honestly. When I'm my poor husband, I got someone from his local authority there from the therapeutic team, and it was all on Zoom. But I basically had this mass meeting, and I just said to them, "You might think we are exploring how he's going to get into school again. I am telling you, as his parent and the person who makes these choices, he will not be going back into school. We've taken the decision to home educate him. And ultimately, whether you agree that that's the right thing or not, at this stage, I don't care. I would be doing him a disservice if I didn't do this now." And the head, who is adopting, went, "It's absolutely the thing you should do for him."
Wow.
She was like, "I have no question that what he wants and what he needs is more time with you. He wants to be with you. He clearly doesn't feel safe. And your bond is not worth risking."
Wonderful.
So from then, it was like, right, how do we do it? Yeah. So that's quite a
That's a big
Yeah.
question.
How did
How
it
do
feel
we
when
do
that
it?
when the head said
story.
that? Because that must have been one of the first times somebody actually acknowledged what you were thinking and saying. Because it must have felt for a long while like was it pushing against? Maybe I don't know.
I guess in a way I thought, yeah, I bet you do because you're relieved you've not got to
Oh
deal
yeah.
with him every day in the foyer. Like
You're taking a problem away
quite
from me in
cynical.
one sense, but
Yeah, yeah.
maybe.
But I know she was just about to go off on leave and adopt as well. And that would have been another person he would have lost because he
True.
was starting to trust
Yeah.
her. Like it was never ending, the kind of barriers.
The triggers for
Yeah.
him.
So, and I kind of had to convince my husband because I'm the slightly bolshier one of the pair of us and more risky. Well, I'm the risk taker really. But I knew I could teach stuff because I'd do it at a university, so that helps. Not that I knew how to teach a primary school kid, but I used to teach brass instruments in music services at primary schools, and a kid's a kid. And ultimately, I didn't care. I'd reached the point where his education didn't matter to me anymore. I just needed him to feel safe and to know that I was there and I was going to do what he needed, and I didn't really give two hoots about the quality of the education would be.
Mm.
I think there's so many things from what you've said. The big emotions, not just for your son, but for you as a parent as well. The advocacy and the battling that you had to do, the decisions you had to make. But I think what shines through is that acknowledgement that we want the best outcomes for our children in every aspect of their life. But what the most important thing is that underpins anything else is your relationship with your child. That's the key to anything else, isn't it?
That's it. That's why have children if that's not going to be a priority? And I know it's really hard for people to make that a priority sometimes. So we've got to navigate now. How on earth are we going to do it? I think if it had not have been for COVID, my work wouldn't have been as flexible. My husband changed days around and what have you. My mum gets involved as well. But because of the situation, we were kind of able to make it work from a practical point of view, and we knew we could do that. And frankly, if not, my husband was just going to quit his job, and we'd go down to a one income household because that's what it needed. So yeah,
Wow. So you've had a mass meeting.
yeah.
You've made it clear where you stand. What, Joe? What do you have to think about? What is there to know? Like, how do you start that transition to home educating?
So the thing you have to do officially is deregister with the school. So you have to write to the school and tell them that you're deregistering your child. There's some really helpful Facebook groups. One called HEFA, HEFA, which stands for something helpful. I can't remember what. Home Education for All. But they've got like templates which quote, "This is the bit of legislation that says you're allowed to home educate. Put this in your letter." So the things that you really would find and struggle to get yourself, possibly. Um, so you write to the school to say you're deregistering. They have to accept that. Schools will say to parents, "Oh, we need to come and do an assessment with you, or we need to do this." But we deregistered, wrote the letter, and then the school are responsible for notifying the local authority. So every local authority has a home education team. Annoyingly, they sit within the same team as the kind of absences non-attenders team. So it doesn't make it feel like it's something the council or government particularly support. You feel like you're in a bit of a naughty club, but whatever. Um, but there's always a couple of elective home education is what it's called. So a couple of elective home education officers in the local authority. So once you've deregistered, they will contact you. And depending on the local authority, for some people that's in a matter of hours, for some people it's days, for some people it's months, and in some authorities it's never, because they're massively understaffed and the number of people that home educate has grown so much that local authorities can't cope with it. But ultimately, I had a chat with someone at the authority, um, and just they said, "Oh, we've been told you're deregistering." They took down just general information, nothing specifically about what we're going to do with him from an educational perspective, but just so they'd got our information. And then they wrote to me and said, "This is what you need to do in terms of documentation to comply with current legislation." Um, and ultimately, that means once a year, the local authority staff will be in contact with you. And it's generally advised to keep that in writing so things can't be misinterpreted. Um, but that um, they'll get in touch with you and either ask you to fill in some paperwork of theirs to say how your child's doing educationally, what they're up to, what they've learnt, or you can opt to write your own document. Some people refer to it as a report. I tend to. So I write an annual report every September where I go through what our kind of ethos is in terms of home education and the approach that we take. And we take quite a specific one in our house. There's lots of different approaches. Um, and then I cover the key things. So I kind of think if you were a head teacher and you wanted to know, is my child learning? What are the things you're going to want to know about? And you're going to want to know about literacy and numeracy. You're going to want to know about social activities, and then all the other subjects that are on the curriculum. When do I work around them When's he learning about those things? So that they can see he's getting a well-rounded education, he's getting some positive experiences, and he's getting to socialise. And the socialising thing is a really key aspect of home education that a lot of people worry about.
Absolutely.
There's no requirement to have meetings with them. There's no requirement for them to come in your house. Some will say that they have to and it's a legal requirement, and that isn't true. So there's a lot of
Okay.
misconception around the home education system in terms of
Mm.
what you do and don't have to do legally. And a lot of authorities do really try and push the door open. Um, and I think from their perspective, they've got a really difficult challenge because there's almost there's a concern generally if you're home educating, what happens to safeguarding? And we've all
Yeah.
seen so many examples in the news of something awful happening to a child, but there are many other things that should happen in terms of safeguarding that aren't just about what education's happening. So why is this child never coming to a doctor? Why aren't they registered at a dentist? The normal kind of things. Why are they not seeing a nurse? They're not having vaccinations. Has anyone asked that question? And I often think that for people who are working in safeguarding and social work in that area, um, I understand why education's a massive part of it, because that's when professionals are seeing your kids every day. So there's monitoring happening. So there is that aspect of what monitoring is going on if someone's home educated.
Hmm.
And I think that's why it's really important to have your kids out at things, get them to classes, get them to meetups, get them doing activities that means they are around other professionals. Um,
Yeah.
because you say all of that, you know, you can say and prove that all of that's happening then. So there's the safeguarding kind of concerns you can help to mitigate a bit. So that was a long answer, sorry.
That was really important. That was really important points. Fantastic. Don't apologise. Keep going. You're discussing with it.
I write a report every year. Me and my husband use WhatsApp together, so we've got a WhatsApp chat that's specifically about what he does and what he learns, not what my husband does and learns. There's not much there. What my son, no matter what my son does and learns. Just so we take photos of stuff or we've got little notes. So when I come to write the report, I can just skim through that and it acts as a reminder for myself, because I think a lot of people panic. They've got to keep a massive diary. You really don't. Um, you're spending so much time with your child that you're observing what they're doing, you're seeing what they're learning. So it's not arduous in that way. And if you send your report in, normally within a few weeks, the local authority will come back to you and say that's great, that's accepted. With ours, sometimes ours send out a newsletter, home education newsletter. So like, oh, could we just include that he's got this certificate or this award in it? Because they like to share the positive stories, and they share kind of examples of what they're organising locally as well. So the local authority might organise kind of story sessions at local libraries and what have you. So yeah, in terms of kind of the legal requirements, it's pretty manageable, and I think it is something that scares people. Um,
Hmm.
if you talk to people who've home educated forever and aren't known to their local authority, they're very wary of the local authority, like very stressed about them. Because I think there's just a fear that someone's going to tell them they're not good enough. And then the fear of someone making your child go into school when they've never been into school is massive for some people. Um, But when you talk to people who've deregistered and they've got used to doing that kind of reporting system, then actually, um, most authorities have at least one member of staff who's pretty good at what they're doing. Some authorities, you find that there are staff there who are assessing your ability to teach your child when they have no educational experience themselves. So you do start to wonder. You look at the job descriptions for home education officers, and I'm thinking, well, there's not actually anything in there that means you're any better than me at deciding whether this education's appropriate or not. So there are issues within the system, and the current kind of children welfare and schools bill, in a very weird way, thinks it's addressing those issues. We probably shouldn't come on to that bill today because that would never stop me talking. Yeah, but actually, I would say that the fears people have around how they report back to the local authority, there's a lot of support out there. The Facebook groups are out there. You know, there's
Hmm.
one that they will check, kind of do a report check for you if you're nervous for your first report, just to make sure you've not missed
Oh,
anything
wow.
obvious. So there's a really supportive network, and it's a huge network. It's massive.
And I suppose it's an opportunity to celebrate as well, isn't it? To reflect and to think, look at what we've done over the past 12 months. But if I can ask a random question, Joe, and I'm sorry, I have to admit that home education is not an area that I am very knowledgeable about at all.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and make my question make sense. But how do you know what you want to teach your son? And how do you plan for kind of his whole educational experience? So not just like the now or the next academic year, but like as he gets to 15, 16. Does that question make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah,
Does that,
totally.
yeah,
There's loads of different approaches with home education. So, and people call it homeschooling, and everyone in the home education community starts to twitch because it's not replicating school at home. It's
no,
not called
it's home
homeschooling.
education.
Homeschooling is when you are still partnered with the school and the school are providing the work. It's a very different system. So with home education, some people do literally try and recreate a school um, kind of profile, and these are the classes you're going to do each week. They might bring in tutors, it might be online learning, it'll be the kind of CPG books that people use. So CPG books you can buy online, but it all follows curriculum for that age range. So some people do that and are really formal about it. Some people follow the national curriculum. You don't have to. There's no legal requirement to do that. That's just for schools. Um,
Okay.
Most people don't follow the national curriculum completely, but they pick bits out of it and probably
Hmm.
pick the things that they think are relevant. So I am pretty pragmatic about what we will and won't do.
That's fair.
And I think a lot of teachers think some aspects of the national curriculum are a load of
Oh
rubbish as
God,
well.
so they do
So,
it.
like, having the choice of what you think is relevant, and also what you think is relevant, because the world's evolving and the curriculum isn't evolving. So we talk about AI loads, and we look at when would we use AI for something, when wouldn't we? How do we identify that this source is realistic or not? How, we'll get loads of videos and I'll be like, which ones are real and which ones are AI? He's better than me at spotting all of that stuff. So we just try and bring the modern world into it as much as possible. Um,
That's
some
brilliant.
people buy curriculums, so there's a bit of an industry of kind of generally former teachers kind of creating their own, and it might be a nature-based curriculum, for example, or a science-based curriculum, but often about getting out and about in the world. Some people, there's a lot of online learning that goes on, and there's loads of different provisions for that, a huge amount.
Okay.
We unschool, which is the scariest version for everybody else. So unschooling means we do not have a structure. We don't do maths at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday. Um, we do child-led learning. So if he's interested in a subject, then go for it. Off you go, work it out, find your own sources, find your own research materials, do a load of reading, do what you can, come back to me, let's have a chat about it. So for us, I keep an eye, and I kind of, I've dipped in every so often, especially when I'm writing my reports. I dip into the national curriculum so I can see where he should be. So I use that as a
Hmm.
marker mentally, but I don't sit down and go, we need to do this now because it says that in year 6, this is what you'll do, and this is what you do in year 4. I don't believe in that. A child is at the level they're at, and if I'm going to develop his math skills, I don't care where he started, I care where he's going to end up. Um, so in some subjects he'll do something and it'll be GCSE level because he's just really into it. So he's gone down an absolute rabbit hole, and I'm really hands off, and the things he can tell me are amazing. And then other things need a bit more cajoling. Maths for us is very much, when is maths useful in life? When is it practical? We need a new shed and we need to fit your bike in it, but your bike's going to have to go at an angle. So go and measure the shed, go and work out the width, go and measure your bike and work out the measurements the shed will need to be. You know, it doesn't need to be difficult.
Yeah.
Baking and the amount of maths involved in baking, the amount of maths involved in online gaming, and online gaming is everyone's fear. My kid's just going to sit at home online all day. He spends quite a lot of time online, but he's socializing while he's doing it. He's interacting with people. He's got his own YouTube channel. He edits his own videos. Like, he's got loads of followers. He thinks about content. He's got a little book and he writes a content planning of what he's going to do, what's trended, what hasn't trended. Like, I have to keep it real and be like, don't expect to be a YouTube billionaire. But um, generally, Yeah, it's just what he wants to do, because sometimes education system stamps the fun out of learning, and how many kids are there? And just because they're in the classroom, it doesn't mean they're engaged. It doesn't mean they've learned anything. I remember looking at one of his reports once, and I went to a parents' evening, and it was year one parents' evening, and she showed me his work, and I was like, "This is brilliant! I'm really proud." I turned the page in his workbook, and it was just squirrely lines at the top of the page. I said, "What happened that day?" She's like, "Oh, I didn't notice that." I was like, "You didn't notice that for a whole day? Clearly, everyone else was working, and all he could do was squirrely lines at the top because he's preoccupied thinking about something else and struggling. How sad to spend the day.
Yeah.
Like, so, uh, but equally, there'll be days here where we're like, oh, let's just go out and play football, and let's just, we have a full, it's definitely, there's a lot of PE happens in this house. Him, not me, more so. But yeah, the amount that he can learn because he's interested in it is much more than he would learn if I started to try and dictate what he was doing. Um, he goes to classes, he does trampolining, he does gymnastics. He's like doing so well. He's got like 12 trampolining certificates that he's done, and um, gymnastics, football. I organised a local meet up in a park because there wasn't anything quite in our area that fitted in my work schedule, and I've got a flexible working agreement, so I get a longer lunch break on certain days to fit things around. So I just created a meetup, and there's like 200 people in that Facebook group alone, and kids coming along
Mhm.
from all different ages as well. He's socialising with 2-year-olds and 15-year-olds. He's not just socialising with people in his year group. He's talking to adults more, socialising with a wider range of adults. It's just a complete win. Like when you start to pull it apart, as long as you can stop your own panic of are they going to be good enough, and actually does he need 11 GCSEs? Because I've got 11, and what was the point? Like all it did was stress me out. I sit on the clearing telephone lines at university. So when university you've
Mhm.
got lots of places
Yeah.
left. I sit on our clearing line, and sometimes you're like, oh, the only GCSEs I ask about are maths and English. Like, uh, GCSEs are just a route to A levels, and A levels are a route to university. And if you're not going to go to university, because we don't all need to do that in the modern world, then yeah, I just think it needs a different outlook. So there's something called deschooling, which is for the kids, but also for the parents. So deschooling is a process of kind of investigating other ways of learning that aren't standards. Kind of, this is our weekly timetable and this is our structure. Um, and deschooling for the kid also involves when they first come out of school, just a certain amount of time of backing off, not worrying about learning so much. And I did it with him for a few weeks. We were still doing activities, we were still chatting about stuff and learning that way, but I just observed his natural kind of cycle. What does a day look like for him in terms of his energy levels? So that if I try and get him to do something at 10 o'clock in the morning, forget it. He don't sleep very well. He's not going to do anything productive at 10 o'clock in the morning. But give me 2 o'clock and he's banging it out the park and I can't keep him still. So use that, learn and observe what your child can do energy wise through the day and where they're at and when does their brain, when do they drop off like we all do at 3 o'clock and we need a biscuit. Like, but every kid's different. So I think taking the time to do that's really important because you can maximize the time that you do spend then if you're trying to focus on something specific. God, that was a long
Absolutely.
answer again. Sorry. Oof.
No,
It
it's
was.
fantastic. No,
Sounds
absolutely
good.
fantastic insights.
Think
Really amazing.
brilliant. I think Lisa wanted to. We.
Yeah, no, no, please don't apologise. I've always been quite scared of home education, I'll be honest. I think that comes, as you were saying earlier on, about, our own background. So, I went through school, did my A levels, went to university. It was a big thing, and, and then working in a school as well. I've always just been not dismissive of home education, that would be wrong, but frightened of it because how do I know that I am good enough? How do I know that they are good enough? And so
Mm.
much of what you were saying is really making me reevaluate that in myself. So no, please don't apologize. I'm very quiet today, but it's because I'm soaking it all up. And one of the things that I was going to ask you about is because you said right at the start about your son being like really sociable when he was at nursery, that he was very sociable and when he first went to school. And I think that's one of the things that's also scared me a little bit about home education is how do you get those socialization opportunities. But I think you've already really covered that through his online world,
Hmm.
the meetups, the classes. But is that something that you keep an eye on? How well socialized he
Um,
is?
yeah, I mean, it was initially, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to have to get this kid out of the house, especially after COVID as well. I think every parent was like, right, we're going to have to tiptoe into the real world at some point. So we avoid, I don't go to the park in half term because the park's rammed anyway, and I don't think I liked it when he was in school, let alone now. So it's really funny. We talk about the fact that all the school kids come out in the school holidays and all the home educators disappear. And we all go back under a rock, and then we're like, yeah, it's September again. So there is an element of not wanting to overwhelm him socially and not wanting to push him too much into things. But I tend to do it by finding an activity that he likes, and then the activity will have other kids there. And then kids want to have fun together and they want to chat and they want to have a laugh and they want to take the mick out the teacher. They'll do that naturally. So he's just got and if he's like, oh, I don't like so and so, I'm like, that's okay. Just be kind to them. You don't have to like everybody. Not everyone likes us, and that's all right as well. I think the benefit is the age range that he socializes with.
Mm.
That there's no barriers to that, or there's no, oh my god, they're a big kids. Like that's just not a thing. They're just kids. Um, and I totally get kind of where you are when you're thinking like, oh, I remember thinking, I remember sitting in a cafe once and there was a woman and she was clearly home educating her teenage girls and they were doing maths like workbook or something. And I just thought, oh my God, these girls, they must be such geeks. They must not have any friends. They're going to grow up to be weirdos. Like, honestly, I was that person who was like, oh, it's only hippies that home educate. Like, I totally thought that. But now, I just don't think that at all because I know differently. I mean, the vast majority of people who I see home educating do so because the SEM provision in school has not met the needs of their children. That's absolutely where the majority are coming from,
Well, yes.
um, like without a doubt. But then for my son with a trauma background, that can present in a really similar way in some ways to autism and different things in terms of behaviours. Um, and then I've got ADHD, so he's used to dealing with different people, with different kind of levels of neurodiversity and in different kind of positions. Um, and I think it does you really well because he's not being separated from anybody because of age or because of disability or anything like that. They're all just in it together. And I did just create my own meetup because I just thought this is ridiculous. The football group he does, I was like, oh, the one that works on the day when I need it to work because of when I have to be on site for work. There's too many kids there. There's loads of 3 and 4 year olds. He's not going to enjoy playing football with 3 and 4 year olds. He doesn't want to worry about breaking someone's shins. So we created a group locally that's for an older age range, which is good as well because there's sometimes not a huge provision of social stuff for teens. So those of us whose kids are growing up now have started to look at how we can do that and support that locally. But I think you need to prepare to make the effort to go and find it. And if it's not there, make it happen. Like, be the person.
So I guess from what you're saying there, and I'm sorry if I made an assumption that this is it. It's home education until the end, as it were. Do you know what I mean? So there's no consideration of transitioning back or anything like that. You're fully sold.
If primary school doesn't work, how on earth is secondary school going to work? Like, I was good academically, top set for everything, but I mean, I think my school attendance, like in a GCSE year, was 81%, and the school were horrified because I just kept. I lied and said I'd got sinusitis for a year. I ended up at hospital at one point because I just hated it. Didn't want to be there. Didn't enjoy it. Felt horrible. Was overweight. Felt a bit picked on and not part of things, and and a bit isolated sometimes. So I just lied about being ill, so I didn't have to go to school. Well, if I'm prepared to do that, what would he be prepared to do? Like, that's ridiculous. The idea, I mean, I see all the kids coming out of our local secondary schools. Oh my life, I avoid it. As a little kid, an 11-year-old going into a secondary school, it must be so intimidating. So I'm not bothered, because I'm resigned to the fact I couldn't give two hoots how many GCSEs he gets. I've got no interest in him having to get on with a load of kids who you'd actively avoid as an adult. Like, as an adult, we can choose who we socialise with. Generally, work's not always an option. But we can also remove ourselves from people quite easily if they're just not our vibe. Whereas kids are forced to be together in a horrible environment. I just don't think it's important. And he can do vocational courses. There are local colleges that, and increasingly colleges do this. They do a 14 plus GCSE group, and some of them do them specifically for home educators. So it's not a 14 plus group of the kids who are kicked out of school, but it's a 14 plus group, because they know that home educators do want to do GCSEs. We do understand the value of it, but also the system means that we'd have to pay ourselves for every GCSE, and it can be like £600 per GCSE. So whereas at school, the government contribute a pupil premium for the length of his school time, I can't apply for a pupil premium for him. I can't apply for any money, any funding for anything at all to support his education. So there's no way on earth he's going to do 11 GCSEs, because I couldn't afford it. Um, but they're but I just don't think they're worth it. But he can go to a college, he can do BTECs, he can do vocational courses, he could do apprenticeships. Like, you can do GCSEs when you're older. We could all go and do more GCSEs and A levels now if we wanted to. I bet we don't, but we could if we wanted to. So there's no age. Just because the government needs us to have everyone educated to a certain level at a certain age, because that's how the system works. That's not how it works in real life. I can go off and get new qualifications now if I want to, and so can everybody else.
And I really like that point, because our education system is set up that we all do have to achieve a certain point by a certain age, and yet we often talk within adoption, when we think of trauma in children's childhood, about it can cause developmental delays, because obviously their primary concern is that feeling safe. We cannot learn unless we feel safe, and it can really impact children's ability to reach the same point as their peers by the same age. But your explanation there is just really valid. There is no age limit on if and when we choose to get qualifications.
And if the point at which we're choosing to do it is because we're very clear and we know what route we want to go down as a career, then we're not wasting our time or brain power learning a load of things that are never going to be relevant to us. Like, I have to remind myself. He's got interested in things about the Second World War, and I keep reminding. I'm like, oh, I remember this, I remember that. So we're learning stuff together again. We start learning languages together on Duolingo. The science. I was never any good at science. He's way better than me, and he'll teach me things. And how great is that, to be able to understand it to the level that you can also teach it to your adults?
I did have a question as well, Joe. That, I mean, you mentioned earlier about how there's that moment in the garden when your son was telling you quite clearly how he was feeling about school and feeling unsafe, and how he was telling you were there to keep you safe, etc. I mean, as he's expressed how he feels now, has he compared that, as he reflected on how his experience has changed over the last few years? Because I'd love to hear his voice in a sense. I know you said it'd be great if we could meet him, but maybe you could tell us a bit about what would he be saying if he was here.
So we have. So he knows I'm doing this podcast. I read him the questions beforehand, so he knew what I was going to talk about, because it's his life and I'm talking about his life. He
Excellent.
deserves to agree to that. So we're all very open, and is there anything you don't want me to answer? He's just like, no, it's fine. So I said to him, in what ways, because this was one of the questions that you sent me in advance to think about, in what ways has home education positively impacted your son emotionally, socially, academically? And he went, well, I said, so tell me, what ways has it done that? And he was like, well, obviously it's helped all of them massively. And I was like, oh, okay, it's that simple, is it? And he was like, well, yeah, look at me. Look at the things I go and do. Look at how cool it is when I go to this class. Or like, he goes to a group, and it's a group kind um, of home ed kids all together on one day a week, and they're there from 10 till 3. It's just one group of kids. We're not there. So I leave him without, he's okay without me there, because he trusts those members of staff. It's like, look at all the cool stuff I do at that session. Look at all the activities I get up to. Like, and he's like, academically, he's funny. He's like, well, academically, have I learned anything in the last few years? I'm not really sure. And then I go, well, have you? And he's like, yeah, I've learnt loads. I wasn't learning much in school, was I?
Hmm.
So he knows and he gets it.
Yeah.
And and I would say in terms of his learning, most of what we do, we badge as conversational learning.
Mm.
So it doesn't have to be come from anywhere else. It's just chatting about stuff. He'll see something, he'll ask a question, and there's always an honest answer. There's always more context. There's always, how could we then explore that a bit more? Does that interest you? What else do we want to find out about that? So we did it with a member of his birth family. We'd made a connection, that they weren't British, in heritage, and it's someone we do contact letters with. Um, and we'd worked out, so we'd hypothesized on where they'd come from and why they'd come to the country at the age that they are, what circumstances in their home um, could have caused that. And then in our contact letter, we said, we've worked out, we think you've come from this place around this year for this reason. And it was a refugee situation. Um, and she wrote back to us, this older relative, and said, actually, it was this and this and this happened and this happened. So in part of finding out part of his family history, we also got this massive bit of context that happened to be around around a war. And so really great stuff that then feeds into his learning that he got into about Second World War. So so he just sees the opportunity to learn stuff. So to him, it doesn't feel like he's learning. So the question about what have you achieved academically, he's a bit like, oh, I don't know. And then once you start to go through it with him, he's like, oh yeah, actually, yeah, I'm
Quite
not
a
bad,
bit.
quite good. Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
you're not having formal assessment points, are you, where you're saying, well, let's look at your progress and here's the scores and all the rest of it, so that you're not marking those points in the same way. So yeah.
But he goes to, so once a week he goes to a kind of home ed club, and he's there all day with other home ed kids with two facilitators, and we're not there. We just drop him off and pick him up. I couldn't have imagined that would be possible a few years ago.
No,
Just no way. And now he's like, it's best day of the week.
Amazing.
it is. It is incredible, honestly. And I think what one of the questions was how can you describe day to day? But I think we've talked about the fact that that varies, and it's led by your son and what he's interested in. I suppose for me, if I can ask and tell me if not, what is the day to day for you and your husband? Because how do you juggle and balance everything?
So I obviously both of our employers knew that we had gone on adoption leave at some point. We were both very clear with them that if there was ever a circumstance where our employment status needed to change because that's what he needed, then it would change, and he will always be the priority. So we were just really clear. My employer's really good. Loads of the staff there adopt. Like there's an adoption parents network. Like it's cool. Um, and I just went back to them and said, look, this is a situation. And if you want me to stay here, and I've been here for a long time, and I think you think I'm quite good at my job, then I'm going to need a flexible working agreement. Thank you. So I mapped out what does that need to look like. Um, and because my husband's a shop manager, he'll work on a Saturday and have a day off in the week. So he's at home a day in the week as well. And then my mom's here a day in a week, and that's really important. So the fact that it's not just me and dad all of the time, it's grandma, and that's a different perspective on life altogether, isn't it? And having to get through a day at home with your grandma, blimey, I don't think I'd have coped with it. But she's great because she brings cake every time, and
Oh,
Um,
perfect.
but they'll go off. They'll be like, "Oh, at lunchtime we went to the cinema together," or they'll do stuff together, which is lovely. Um, so yeah, I think employers have to consider a flexible working agreement. So explore what your employer's policies are and be brave enough to say it, and understand your own value in the workplace, because I think so many people worry that an employer won't support them with something like that. But a certain percentage of my week was office based. Well, why sit in the office if I can do it at home? And with Teams and Zoom and all that other technology now, you don't have to be in a room with everybody all of the time. I'm the team leader for my lot, And bless them, I think they're quite glad that I'm not in the office every day nagging at them. They have a bit of freedom, so that's good as well. But also, he comes into work with me sometimes. If I've got an event on at work, and I working events, he'll come in and he'll sit through the event and he'll help us pack away afterwards, and he'll learn how different things work. He sat in COVID through my lectures, so the subject I lecture in, and it involves a bit of kind of business management kind of stuff and project management work. So he listened so much that then one day, as a 9-year-old, went, "Oh, shall we do a SWOT analysis for that then?" And I was like, "Oh, you're always listening, always learn," and he knows what it is. So they're always learning, aren't they? They're always absorbing. Everything you say goes in. They soak it in. So just talk at the dinner table. We sat at the dinner table the other day. I got home from a really busy day, and I don't quite know why. Something came up. He made a joke about the UN and Donald Trump. Don't know why. Anyway, and I was like, "Is that the UN or is it NATO? What's the difference?" And just over dinner, and then we ended up with me with a list of all the NATO countries and when they became NATO countries, and him and my husband going through the alphabet, trying to work out which countries would be part of NATO, what year they joined NATO and why they joined it in that year. So they're also thinking about why did Sweden only join NATO in 2024? I mean, I know that they were impartial in First and Second World War, but blimey, what? That took a while to get on board. So it's really interesting. And then looking at what happened around the world, and when all the kind of Czech Republic wars and everything, and then when people joined after that. So just silly little conversations that spur a moment of, well, let's chat about that then, rather than looking at our phones, rather than staring at a telly. So conversational learning is massive.
It is. And I think, for me, it's not just the learning that comes from that, it's the connection and the relationship with your son, that again is still prevalent because, like you said, on a night we're all exhausted. It's so easy just to sit in front of the TV and veg and probably scroll through your phone or whatever, but you're making eye contact with each other, you're actively listening and communicating, you're sharing jokes together, like, as well as learning,
Yeah.
but it's in a relaxed way.
I the bond that we've got now, you never know when you're adopting. I think you would like to think that you will get to a point where it's we're going to love each other and this is all going to work out. Um, and we talk about it. We talk about it loads.
Mhm.
We talk about how it makes us feel that we love each other this much, how it makes us feel. And I was just like, I can love you unconditionally, but you have so many conditions attached to your love because of what you've been through, because of the loss you've experienced, and I was just like, how amazing that all of those conditions are just right with us. So you can love me as much as someone who has unconditional love. And like, just to express that and talk about that, I don't think we'd have those conversations if we was in school. We wouldn't find the moments for it. We wouldn't find the quiet time. And the car journeys would be about getting to school and back. Have you got your bags? Have you got your the practicalities of life take over so much when school's involved. Whereas this has given us so much room to explore who he is as a person. Um, so I get to just hang out with my best mate, like, and that's phenomenal. Like, it's unbelievable. It's utterly ridiculous. So it's a joy, and it can be stressful. But I think the de-schooling's massive, and getting your head around the different ways that your child enjoys learning and lean into that. Don't try and be prescriptive. Just because you like to learn in one way, it doesn't mean they did. So just yeah, chill out. And the internet needs to be safe, but it's absolutely not your enemy. I find it amazing how many parents are just in utter panic about any internet in the daytime, any gaming. And I'm like, well, back in the day, I had a massive, we used to have these, my dad used to buy this catalogue, The Tree of Life, and it was like a kid's version of the encyclopedia, and you get a delivery every month of a new bit to put in it. So if I wanted to find anything out, I've got to look through 25 binder folders or the encyclopedia. And I'm like, it's all there for him. The, and so what we focused on to start with was how do we know we're looking in safe spaces? What is internet safety? And what are safe sources? How do we know that sources are reliable? And so if he ever went to university, and working in a university, I can tell you this, the best kids are the ones who know how to work on their own, source things independently, assess whether something's a viable source or not. So all the things we'd try and teach a first year student at a university and knock out the A level spoon feeding mentality, home education kids are there. They've been there for years. So they make amazing university students. And so it shouldn't stop that aspiration. And a lot of parents and a lot of kids, want to do that. And home education does not need to be a barrier for it. And increasingly, universities are changing entry requirements anyway, to more practical things. So the A level requirements aren't necessarily what they used to be. So it's a matter of finding the right course. God, I'm doing everything, aren't I? I'm covering higher
I was going
education
to
now as
say,
well.
I also work for university, and one of the things that I've got involved in is in the apprenticeships. That universities run those too. There's a really interesting way in. Of course, that's great.
Yeah,
Also, the great thing about that is you don't have to pay any fees. So if anyone's worried
yeah,
about debt and so on as a student or as a parent.
yeah. I think I reflect on university. Yeah, just because it doesn't need to be a barrier. And I think a lot of people think I could do home education, it'd be good for my kid, but then they're not going to become what they could have become. And that's not it.
I guess the question would be, there'll be lots of parents listening to this with great interest. I'm absolutely sure, because certainly we are. And but there may be many of those who've considered this as an option, or maybe slightly toyed with the idea, but maybe not given it serious consideration. But what advice might you give to anyone who's just beginning to think about, maybe they've got a child who's not going into school? I deal with a lot of cases, and particularly at the moment with a lot of young children, teenagers particularly, who are just not going into school, opting out, and I can understand often why that's happened. Um, and in many ways, you might say it's a little bit late for some of the home education, but I guess it's probably never too late, is it? What options might some parents need to think about?
Um, well, I met someone this week and they'd removed their 15-year-old 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it really is never too late. And I think often we do it when we reach absolute crisis
Mm.
point. And so we did it when we reached absolute crisis point. And and it's the one thing I really regret, that I let it get that bad that I could see it was damaging our relationship and the trust he had for me before I did anything about it. And I really regret that I'd left it so long. The key, I think, is understanding and get a sense that home education, in terms of a kind of philosophy, is okay and it doesn't harm your kids. So the thing I did, there's a podcaster, and he's on social media as well, called Stark Raving Dad. So it's an American guy, but he's got older kids, younger kids, and he writes so many articles about what his kids are up to, why home education is okay. He's written a little booklet, a pamphlet, which is how to explain home education to grandparents,
Mhm.
because that's a massive thing as well, other people's judgment.
Yeah.
So Stark Raving Dad is a really good starter point for what on earth is home education and how could it possibly be better than school is for my kid. Um, so I would definitely suggest people go there. And then, I mean, there's a million Facebook groups for home education. If you just search your local area and put home education and the town or the city, there's probably, or the county, there'll be a Facebook group for
Mm.
it. There's also one that's specifically for looked after children as well. Um, those can be a bit scary because you do hear that there's a lot of panic on there. People go there first. I would say don't go to Facebook first.
Mhm.
Do some of your own research, because Facebook, there's all sorts of stuff on there that could scare the life out of you. It can be a really useful resource, but I learned quite quickly that I started to feel a bit overwhelmed by all the Facebook
Yeah.
chatter. Um, so, but there's some really good books as well, and I think um, there's a book, I can't remember who wrote it. It's called Unschooling. So there's probably only one. Um, but it was great just to give me a sense of what life might look like. Because what I didn't want to do was spend every day nagging him to do stuff and then become the enemy in that way
No.
as well. This was about
Hmm.
rebuilding the relationship, not about just creating a different set of barriers. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and reading up on the internet about deschooling, I think, is key. But um, and maybe use the 6 weeks holiday as a trial. So think about what might life look like if we home educated, and what if I tried that over the 6 weeks holiday and see how that felt? Because you'll very quickly realize your kid's not going to want to sit there and do workbooks over the 6 weeks holiday, are they? So you're going to have to find other ways of trying to get them to learn. It's stealth, really. You're like, they're learning, but they don't know it. It's quite fun. Yeah. It's like a little personal challenge.
Well, so many
Yeah.
things that people do, I guess they don't always recognise the educational value of that, do they? Days out, just conversations and curiosity in themselves are massively important.
The big one that comes up on all the Facebook channels. We've done this today. How would I put that in my report to make it seem like it's educational? And I'm always like, it is educational. You've been to a farm. You've seen animals in action. You've learned about, like, people find it really hard to pull out what they've learned from different experiences. So that's a skill that I think you kind of develop over time a little bit as well if you don't have it naturally. If you've come from education, you've got that in you. That's kind of innate, isn't it? That was all part of your training. You've spent years dealing with kids anyway. You can pick out when kids are learning and what they're learning. But if you're not used to that, or maybe you found your own educational experience quite difficult, it can be really intimidating. Um, so there are groups there who will help you. You know, we did baking today. How did that help? And someone will literally go, well, surely you used a measuring jug, so that's some maths. Surely you did this, you did that. This is science as well. You're using different, Um, so there's always kind of help there. Just reach out and connect to the home education networks around you.
Right.
And we'll definitely pop that in the bio. You mentioned Heifer and the unschooling book, so we'll pop those in as well. Thanks, Joe. And I think we've touched on how home education has positively impacted on your son emotionally and socially and academically, but and his words, which is incredible. I suppose, have you seen changes in his self esteem or his behaviour or engaging with the world? I know you talked about there were times when he became violent, and I suppose we're attributing that really to just the complete dysregulation and fear he was feeling. But, you know, in himself, what changes have you seen, if any?
Confidence has grown massively. Sense of humour has grown massively as well. And I don't know whether that's just being around different age kids as well, or being around adults a bit
Maybe.
more. But his sense of humour, but I suppose that grows over time. But his confidence absolutely has grown massively in the things he's prepared to try, have a go at. Um, he's a real joy to just chat with. And I think the fact that he spends the day with grandma means he's just got to put up with some old lady chat, and that's a real skill to flex, isn't it? Like
It
learning
is.
how to talk to different types of people in different ways, learning how to accommodate the kid at football who can't comprehend the rules at all, but they're there and they deserve to be there and they want to socialize. So how are you going to navigate that? So I think he's absolutely blossomed. There's been no, and I swear, no violence at all. No outbursts,
Wow.
nothing since the day I removed him. That was it. Like, and I think being heard is massive. We tried a group a few weeks ago, and there were loads of secondary school kids there, and they were really loud and really rowdy. And I was like, "Oh, this is overwhelming." And he was like, "This is too much. I don't want to be involved in this." And it was a different football group. Um, and whereas before I'd have gone, "Go on, just try, please, just go in, just go in." I don't want to be that person. Like, it's horrible trying to be that person. So I was just like, "You're not up for it. You don't want to do it. No, why would I want to go in there with them? That's going to be horrible." And I'm like, "Okay, we'll go home then. We'll find something else." So listening to them, and then we'd always done a lot in terms of expressing his emotions. So we used to use a book called The Colour Monster. I don't know if you've come across.
Okay, yeah,
So
yeah.
we used to use that anyway when he was in school, and we'd pull up there's little bottles at the end of how much of each emotion you felt each day.
Hmm.
And then at bedtime the next day, we'd have left the bottles from the day before. So every day we'd compare the different feelings one day to the next.
Okay.
And that comparison, and then talking through, well, why do you think you weren't as sad today? What happened that made you happier? What happened that made you angry? And picking that apart. So his emotional intelligence is really high. And I do say it's higher than a lot of adults. And my husband goes a bit potty, but I'm like, he's definitely got higher emotional intelligence than my husband now. We all joke about it. It's fine, but it's all right. But because I'm around him so much, because my husband's around him so much, um, we're seeing the changes all of the time. What I would say as well is because my husband's at home 1 day a week with him as well. Um, it's really made sure that the bond is really equal between mom and dad. So it's not that he comes to mom when he's feeling sad or needs nurture or needs, like, daddy's the go-to, daddy's. And it's been amazing for my husband to be able to have that time with him rather than being the stereotypical I'm the dad and I'm out working in the week and I don't get to do that. So that's been a really positive for everyone's relationship with him. Like, it's been amazing. But I think he just feels so listened to, and what's better than
Mm.
that as a human?
There's not, is there? And I think, especially for our adopted children, when, we say so much has been done to them, so many choices have been made for them, and they've been so powerless and helpless in all of that. To feel that you've got a voice and you've got choice and you've got autonomy, like, that must be
Mm.
huge.
Yeah.
Choice is everything. Yeah. The only choice he doesn't have is when he has to come and do the food shop with us. But then, he puts enough stuff in the trolley
I
that
say
he's
then,
getting a decent
otherwise you
deal
don't
out of
get the
it.
food. That
Yeah,
is
he
a
gets
consequence.
choices when he's there.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. And so much of what we've talked about with him is when you were little, you you weren't given any choice. Things were done for you, done to you, done around you. Um, and we really own, like, our own kind of role in that trauma as well. So I know it was traumatic to be removed from birth parents. It was traumatic to be removed from the foster carers. We're part of that trauma. We took him away from foster carers who he was really settled with. So we own that trauma, and we've always said to him, we know that this is part of your trauma, and we aren't saving you, and we aren't these magical parents who are making everything okay. You probably would have been okay if you could have stayed with that foster carer long term. You'd have felt okay for a while, but the long term repercussions of that you wouldn't have known for a long time. But owning, yeah, just the honesty. It's given us so much chance to be honest about everything because you're together all the time. So what are you going to hide? You can't hide anything.
And nobody masks either.
No,
You don't mask
No,
and he doesn't.
no,
that's a
And
big
that's
difference.
so
yeah.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, massive. And I'm a crier, like, and I'll be like, oh, he'll go to his dad, oh, she's crying again, and his dad will go, she's crying because she's really happy. Like, I'll just sit there. I get so overwhelmed by how amazing things are. It sounds ridiculous. It's so not who I was before I was a mom. I used to be double hard, but now I'm definitely not. Yeah, I just think home education is an amazing, amazing thing if you can find a way of doing it. And I know that money and earning money is a massive factor for people, and I know that being able to home educate for a lot of people is a privilege. Um, but your grandparents can be involved. If an auntie and uncle has a day off in the week, they can be involved as well. It doesn't have to be mom with child every day of the week. That's I don't know
Yeah.
anyone who does it that way actually. It's quite rare to do it that way. Or maybe a few people, but there people just go freelance, people reduce their hours, people get jobs where they're working at, I don't know, venues and cinemas in the night instead, or they're doing self-employed work. They get really creative um, to be able to do it. So obviously, you've got to make sure that you're financially stable because it costs money to do the activities. But there are also loads of activities that are free, and there's lots of
Yeah.
online learning that's free as well. So I feel like there's a way for everybody to be able to do it, if you can take the time to do the research.
And I suppose it is absolutely that, doing your research. And I suppose stepping outside of your comfort zone, isn't it? And putting those messages that you've had about education in your childhood and your life to the side, to think about that might look and be different for my child.
Yeah, and I think if you it can be really difficult if you had a traumatic schooling. Like, it'll throw up stuff for you as well. So you've got to give yourself the room and the time and the space to do that, because you're kind of re-educating yourself as part of the process, and that can be tough, can't it? So you've just got to be kind to yourself. But the whole thing, yeah, that's it.
Parenting holds up this big self-reflective mirror, doesn't it, that hits you when you don't expect it. So this is a big question, really, I think. But what advice would you give to adoptive parents seeing similar struggles in their children?
Well, I would say don't rush into it, but do start to think about how it might work for you. I think sometimes when you rush into it, and it is sometimes when it's been the, oh my God, we're at crisis, we're just going to have to pull them out of school. So just start to think now. I think anybody, just start to think now, what could that look like for us, and what benefits could that bring to us? And hopefully the things I've been saying about our experiences kind of trigger a few thoughts around that. But it's always something you can do, and if it doesn't work out, I know kids, and they've been out of school for 3 years, and then the kid's gone, oh, I quite fancy going back now, and you can reapply and go back to a school. It doesn't have to be forever either. So yeah, I think there's flexibility. And I think talk to your child about what that might feel like. Like, we discussed it with him. I didn't just pull him out of school and he's like, what on earth is going on? We said, how would that feel? And he was like, oh, is that even possible? Because the problem with school, you get all of the, well, you're going to get fined, you're going to go to prison. And the school almost kind of make you feel like you should say that to your kid. Like, you're blackmailing your kid to go to school. Oh, I'm going to go to prison if you won't go to school. What on earth are we putting on our kids if that's what we're saying? So I would say, if you got to that point, then maybe think about it. Yeah, just have a think and an explore. And just reach out, and just, if you've got social media and you've got lots of friends on there, just do a post and say, does anyone I know home educate? Does anyone know anyone who does? I'd like to have a chat with them. So I did that. I found a friend, and their friend home educated. So we just exchanged a few messages on like chat messenger, just to see. I just wanted to get her perspective of it locally. And she was like, oh my God, it's the best thing we've ever done. Well, once you've heard 20 people say, oh my God, it's the best thing we've ever done, it's not, yeah. And you've just got to try and put away that, I was so like, oh my God, everyone's a hippie and my child's going to be a freak. Like, I was that person. So you've just got to be open. Like, you are open enough to bring this kid into your life and do everything you've needed to do up until now. This is just the next step in being open and seeing what's right for them.
So, Joe, if you could share, and this is hard to limit it down, but one key takeaway with our listeners about education and adoption, what would it be?
Just listen to your child. If they are not going into school, they're expressing that for a reason. They're not being awkward. They're not being obstructive. Like, the uh, those people I've met recently have recently taken their kids out of school, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's been a week and he's a different child. I've got my old so and so back." Like, just listen to them, because that's what you always promised to do. So do it. Yeah, because they'll tell you. It's really clear, isn't it? Once you stop thinking about everyone else, no one else matters. Oh my God. Even my mom, she was like, what are you doing? So I gave her this booklet, that Stark Raving Dad booklet about grandparents, knowing about home ed. But I just was like, everyone else can do one. I don't care what anyone else thinks. This is our choice and this is what's right for him. So you do have to just be prepared to block out all of that noise, but just focus on what your kid needs. And for a lot of people, I think that would get you there.
Thank you, Jade. This has just been amazing. Whether you're considering home education or just curious, Joe's story is a powerful reminder of putting connection and well-being first. We are so grateful to Joe for sharing her experience. If you have any questions or you'd like to share your experiences too, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at education@adoption-focus.org